I had a wonderful night's sleep. Last night I actually spent some time chatting and hanging out with some of the guys in the hostel. Met like a Peruvian guy who speaks amazing English and conversational Japanese, as you do. And a couple French guys, I think a German guy, or Dutch, I couldn't tell. Yeah, Dutch, I couldn't tell. And a Canadian guy. Some good spread. And I thought, you know what, I had a beer and I thought, you know what, let's just relax, maybe take a day off from the intensity. Because I also think there's not so much to do in Hiroshima. So, I had a lie-in. Woke up at 9, can you believe it? I feel so fresh. Actually, that's a lie, I feel kind of similar. But I'm sure my body needed it. Now I'm going to get some breakfast in my local family mart and head off to the Hiroshima Peace Museum. At least that's the plan. Some divine finds. Another sandwich, not just egg this time, egg and teriyaki. Some sushi, because I've not had any yet. I'm sure it's not the best sushi, but it's probably much better than most of the sushi I've had. And then a little iced coffee. So, I'm going to head over to the Peace Museum, maybe eat this in a park. I know Japanese people don't normally eat outside, but I don't see why that means I shouldn't. Yeah, look at this. It's a parking place. You drive in and you got that parking elevator, but it's just casual. Here are the birds. Look at the birds. There's way more than you can see there. Also check out this divine sushi. Oh, look at that. I love that. Then we've got our egg and teriyaki sandwich with no crusts because crusts are for poor people. Look at that. Mmm. Delicious. One thing I've noticed that Japan has, which is really interesting, is that there's no public bins anywhere. And like so many restaurants or like places don't have bins, throw away stuff. If you want to throw away stuff, you have to, if you're outside, you have to go to a convenience store and sort it and put it into recyclables, and there's no just general waste section. And if you're at a hostel or your accommodation, they should have places to bin stuff. But otherwise, there's nothing for public people to bin stuff. And maybe it does mean that Japan is really clean. I'm not sure if that's why Japan's, like, the streets are so clean, there's so little litter. It might be why. All I know is that I don't really see much litter. But also I don't really see many public bins, which is kind of counterintuitive. But either way, I've just packed up my litter into like the little bags and I've put it back in my backpack with my other stuff, which is a bit icky. But there's nothing else I can do unless I want to go back to the hostel and then put away my rubbish. Although I didn't even see that many bins there. Actually, there's definitely bins in my hostel, but still. Alright, to the Hiroshima Peace Museum. Crews are fighting. What for? There they go again. Anyways, the Peace Museum. Need to find the entrance. This is a few months after the bomb was detonated. And this is right underneath the point where it was detonated. These are the clothes of the children that were killed by the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. A combination of art drawn by the affected and images of the consequences. This is an image very close to the epicenter, where someone was instantly evaporated by the bomb. These are drawings of the black radioactive rain that fell on the few survivors of the bomb. Here are depictions of the hospitals. Many of those who survived the bombs or were involved in helping efforts were poisoned by the radiation. I thought this was a cheerful remark by a mother remembering her dead child. These ones, not so much. Someone trying to hold on to life despite their ailments to sustain their family. More paintings of the awful consequences of the bomb. Eventually, you were relieved of the stress of learning of all the awful things that happened. This is a story of some of the truly awful things that can happen during war. I strongly believe that you should have to visit these war museums, especially because of the importance of remembering
good old
and not
war
forgetting.
Memorial in the morning to cheer you up. I'm not sure if you watched that part, but it was very graphic, very harrowing, very rough. My overarching thoughts were primarily, God, war is so bad. It is, and it's unimaginably bad. And I know that's very simple. It's not very nuanced. But the consequences are always the civilians, and it's just awful. I did have a few other thoughts about the content, or the writing, or the perspective of the museum. I won't go into massive detail, but it definitely felt as though the way the situation is described of, well, the wars that Japan was involved in, or this war, the war in particular, was that there's very little criticism towards the Japanese government at the time, which is also very different from the one now, which is surprising. One evidence I might say is, for example, in Japan, a lot of children were brought back into cities that were being bombed to carry out work efforts, so they might work in factories, or primarily the big one that's talked about in the museum is the demolition of buildings. So this is to protect, I can't say exactly what it's for, but essentially they brought lots of teenagers into cities, into war zones, essentially areas that were known to be bombed and were continuously bombed, despite their danger, and so they were put at risk, and then they ended up being killed, and it was awful to hear the stories, hear the photos. I won't say that I know the full picture. There's other things like talking about they make a one sentence comment, or they make very little comment on Japan's part in the war, despite some of the awful things the Japanese army did. They give a couple sentences to the Nanjing massacre, where the Japanese armies raped and murdered thousands of people. I think over 300,000 casualties. More than half of that was civilians. They just cut people's heads off, things like that. But it's like it doesn't feel like any comment really, or any effort is made to say, oh, we did bad. And maybe that's coming from a Western perspective, and actually maybe if the world war had turned out differently, the perspective would be different. And I'm talking from the future, and I don't know everything, but I just think that some more respect could have been paid to the bad things the Japanese government did at the time. But I think every country does that. Britain does that. In their museums, no one really talks about the mistakes. But countries are scared to talk about the mistakes that their country made. I've been blabbering on for a while, and you probably can't be arsed listening to this. If you've skipped, if you've listened through all of it, thank you. It might not have made sense, but yeah. Now I'm gonna go on to see the atomic bomb dome, which is one of the few surviving buildings, which was very strong and well made and steel reinforced. And it was savoured to remember the atomic bomb and the victims of war. So I just wanted to add, this is like almost a week later. I've had some time to think about it. Those were my initial fresh thoughts. Now, here is a quick short bit of my opinion. So I think that all in all, the Peace Museum, that's there to talk about peace and how awful the impact of war is, and so it's not their responsibility to talk about the Nanjing massacre or the bad actions of the Japanese. However, I think I just got the feeling that, and I'm sure you'd probably find this in Japanese museums, I've not seen them, I've not gone to see other ones, but this is just my guess, is that is the general perspective of the government, that they don't want to talk about the things they did wrong in the war. Unlike Germany or other fascist nations, they are at the time, they just are ignoring it, and that was what I was annoyed about, and I still think that that's valid, but maybe my argument's flawed. The Children's Peace Monument. There she is. As an aside, it must be impressively strong to survive an atomic bomb blast from this close. The start of Hiroshima Castle. This has obviously been rebuilt since the atomic bomb, because any of the old wooden buildings were completely evaporated. Studio Ghibli trees. A small but neat castle with a shrine, and then the main castle on here. I think it originated from, it was either 1300 or 1500, I can't remember exactly. So not the oldest, not the newest. This is the shrine. That's the castle.
So the Itsukushima Shrine is from before Hiroshima Castle. So that's 12th century. The castle was 1589. This explains why. The castles weren't. So that's right. A lot of them were originally manors of samurais who ran their regions. Because at this point, Japan was feudal still, which meant landowners, rice. So later on, the castles became headquarters after Japan became unified. Look at these. These were roofing tiles. That's badass. That's a cool samurai outfit. But so when Japan was unified, you had rulers and stated into different regions, but the regions themselves were divided into amounts of rice that would be produced over a period of time, not area. This is what people refer to when they mention Japan's early feudal rice empires. As far as I'm aware, in Japan there was a large competition between the imperial and the shogun, where the imperial is the emperors wanting to take control, and then the shogun being the generals of the military. It seems that the samurai were given these very luxurious living accommodations and had very luxurious lifestyles, very different from the common people, a bit like aristocracies. They weren't the rulers though, but those were the daimyos, but they were supported and facilitated by the daimyos. Now are the weapon exhibits. The samurai swords. Or maybe the blades only. Sharpening stones. And armor. Here's your stereotypical sword and sheath. Katana. These were smaller tanto blades. Another katana. Itachi sword. So these are all different. I assume for different purposes. Here's a very cool, huge one. It's my hand for reference. Wow. I would tell you what it is, but I can't read Japanese. You can pick it up. Surprisingly light. Wow, that's something different. A deer. And some more armors. Made it to the top. What a view. Look at that, the size of that moat as well. There's no getting past that one. Not with an army. Need boats. Finally, this is what the area looked like in the past. It's quite interesting, there's lots of walled gardens. walled off buildings. Everyone's separate and has their own garden or house. I imagine this region was still for the rich people. Maybe out here is where you get the actual normal locals.